Casanova says, Mehran, you were saying earlier about not comparing ourselves with others, but when you face someone who has accomplished something in his life, you start feeling a bit inferior. Why should you? Just appreciate what that person has achieved and kudos for him or her. And that's all. But go on and find what you like to investigate or learn or accomplish and accomplish that. If that's the case, I mean, you will always feel inferior about somebody. Even if you're the best and the best in your field, there will be other fields that you know nothing about. And there are other people who are great at something that they're doing, but they've got no knowledge and they know nothing about what you do or what other fields are available. So what do you think then? If that's the case, just as you feel inferior about someone, that someone would be inferior about somebody else that he doesn't know anything about what he's expert at. And the same, on and on, goes on and so on and so on and so on. So what's the use? Everybody is inferior to everybody, and everybody, again, is inferior to everybody else. So what's the use of comparing? We're all superior to some level of accomplishments or wisdom or ability, and we're all inferior to some other. And the other people are also superior in some wisdom and abilities and accomplishments and inferior to many others. We're all in it in really even, equal way. And why do I sound like Jim Kirk in Star Wars? Because that's what it is all about. Have fun. Don't take it so seriously. I don't know why we have to. Jim Kirk, a great captain, huh? So, this business of inferiority is something that we've been pushed in our heads that we're supposed to be more and better than the others. Otherwise, we are nobody, unless we're better than somebody. That's a crock of shit. That is what brings us to the level of craziness in our lives, because we always feel that I must be better than in everything and about everything compared to everybody else. And that's how I can become really somebody that I can consider perfect. Really? You mean the people that we are comparing ourselves to and are better or not as good as them, they are perfect? That's the standard of perfectness? That if we don't measure up or we are more or less than that, actually fluctuates our level of perfection? We've set the bar so low, haven't we? The only bar that you set for yourself as the level of perfection or to compare yourself with is you yourself. You only compete with yourself. You only compare yourself with yourself. My yesterday and my today and my tomorrow. That's where I compare myself. Am I better than what I used to be? Do I understand more about my psyche better than I used to? Do I have less problem with my psyche than I used to? Do I know more about what has put me together and how I'm put together, how I tick, and how I become a better mechanic of my own machine? And how am I going to use that in order to advance myself in the future? Am I going to be better than my today, tomorrow? Am I going to be doing things that helps me to learn more about myself in order to be able to judge better and not be bamboozled by things that are being thrown at me from out there and from my own thoughts? Which I call my thoughts, but they have nothing to do with me. It just happen to be thoughts that pop up in my head. Can I be smart enough to see it clear that I will not be affected, influenced, bamboozled, confused by thoughts that pop up in my head or the words and opinions that others may utter about me or throw me, whether I was a kid in school or I am now or I will be older then. Because people will do that always for their own shortcomings and fears and for their own struggles of trying to climb up somehow. And since they don't know, mostly try to see if they can attack somebody else to make somebody feel bad in order to make themselves feel good, because they don't know any of it. They're not so intelligent or capable of making themselves better independently. So they try to bully somebody or say bad thing about somebody, so try to make somebody feel bad in order to make themselves feel good, because they ultimately, it is them who really feel terrible and they're very inferior. That's the purpose of the bully, because he has got no other capabilities. So if you were a kid, you were bullied in school, that's what was going on. It wasn't about you, it was about them. And if you're now trying to, be influenced by the people's behavior or the way they look at you or the way they think of you or the way they say things, it's the same shit. Just because they're a little bit bigger, that doesn't mean they've become somebody of wisdom. No, they're the same garbage. And again, the problem is them. If you're being bamboozled by thoughts that pop up in your head, you gotta understand those are transient thoughts, intrusive thoughts, got nothing to do with you. It could be of any sort. Make you imagine things because it's not your imagination. It's the imagination that pops up in your head. And you gotta separate it clearly that what pops up in the head is not got to do anything with me. I am separate. I am the judge. I'm the observer. I will judge what's being placed in my screen, and I will change a channel, or I'll just ignore it and I'll go about what I'm focused on at that moment. I bring myself to the moment rather than to some illusory state which is based on a pop-up thought in the screen of my head. I won't want to be there because that has no reality, no actuality, no factuality. It's not the truth. It's just an illusion. And in most cases is a glitch that keeps that thought in my screen, makes me think because it doesn't go away, it means something. No, it's a glitch of signaling system between frontal cortex and the thymus. Is it? I believe. Is it? Is it thymus? It's it's actually okay, let's see. I gotta get that scheduled correctly. All right. So if you understand that, then you're not bamboozled in your life. You're simply very clear about how things work. Thalamus, not thymus. Thalamus. So when you understand that this is a glitch between the frontal cortex and thalamus, then you are free and clear. You're not going to be bamboozled because you've got the knowledge. You've understood how it works. You understood that frontal cortex was just introduced to us 30,000 years ago. Until then, we didn't have it. We didn't know how to think or speak. We were just animals based on instinct. There was no confusion in anything about us because everything was very clear, because there was no interference of thought popping up, no interference of meaning of a word affecting us and creating an emotion, which that emotion really didn't exist, but it became apparent or in motion because of the meaning of the word that we were conditioned to think of it in a certain way. You know? Before we didn't know, like, let's say, what insult was. So if somebody there was no way to insult us. We were animals of would work on instinct. We'd eat, we'd sleep, we'd I don't know, need to food, and would hunt, or would needed intimacy and procreate, and we would know what our gender is based on what our biology is, and there was no other interference of words being uttered and somebody calls you something else at school, or somebody calls you something now and the word means something, and to you being against opposite of what you are, and it sounds like a suggestion or an opinion that is being, then you start questioning, oh, does that mean it's true? Like if they called me this, does it mean I'm really that? If you're heterosexual and somebody calls you a gay, and then you say, oh, gee, that's not in my nature, and if it's vice versa, then you would question the same thing. These things didn't exist because everything was straightforward. Instinct. But then in the 30,000 years ago, we started learning the frontal cortex, with the last part of it was developed. And then we start learning languages and thinking. And that became it seemed like, falsely, seemed like a source of knowledge describing what we are according to what it popped up in our head. We took it seriously instead of understanding this shit has got nothing to do with my biology. I'm still as I ever was, the way I was born. If you're born gay, you're gay. If you're born heterosexual, you're heterosexual. Nothing's going to change. You will always be safe and be what you are, what you were born. Regardless of what thought pops up or what people utter, based on their agenda or fear or whatever it is. And thoughts can come up with all kind of shit that you've got nothing to do with it. And usually it's based on the fear that you have, something that you don't want to be. A thought grabs onto it and pops up, because that is exactly what you're designed to protect yourself against. And the job of the brain is to look for troubles. And if you can't, it will look and see what angles it can alert you for. And all those alerts is exactly opposite of what you really are. But because it's a thought in your screen of your head, you become confused. Oh, is that a heavenly decree? No, it's a thought popped up. Well, why doesn't it go away? Because there is a glitch sometimes called OCD. It stays in there because the frontal cortex sends a message, an alert, because it's an opposite of you, so it latches onto you to alert you, and you, from your from the thalamus, is it? It tells you, was it thalamus? Or, yeah, from thalamus, which it's responsible to grab on these messages and respond to it from the fragments, the parts of the brain that is responsible to send the signal back. It sends the signal back, which is according to your biology and how you are, what you are, refuses, makes its opinion, says, I'm not interested. But because there is a glitch in the signaling, it doesn't get to frontal cortex. Since it doesn't get there, frontal cortex repeats the question. And then it sends back with no hesitation. But again, doesn't get it because there's a glitch in the signaling system. And it stays there. The question keeps repeating. And then you think, oh, it's staying there. Does that mean that it's true? No, it just means there's a bloody glitch. We all get that. And often it goes away by itself, or you learn what it is and you start conditioning yourself to deal with this properly by not paying attention, not creating a dialogue with it, not treating it as an entertainment or something that you should be concerned about. And eventually that becomes your conditioning to deal with this thing without any entertainment, any attention to it. And naturally, it realizes that there's no takers here. Nobody's fooled here. Nobody plays with this, and falls by the side. Because if there's no reaction to it, then you allow these thoughts, like thousands of the thoughts of any kind, just as you allow them to be there and you disregard them and you focus on your daily life. You got to treat intrusive thoughts in the same way. Not that, oh, just because it's about my sexuality, now I gotta really take it. No, there are other kinds of thoughts that comes to your head and you don't give a damn about it because you just know that it's not got nothing to do with you, have no interest in it, therefore you focus on your things. But when it comes to sexuality, because that's the way that's the most important thing to us, you're very sensitive about it and you go on to defending it and so on. And that whole reaction to it brings it to become a matter to ponder. And that pondering plus the glitch in the signaling system keeps that question there, which makes you confused and go, oh, it means something. Then you create anxiety, fear, and all that, and that feeds into the chemical that is created in your biology, and you feel terrible, and you start thinking that, oh, it must mean something. All along, it means nothing, just like thousands of other thoughts that comes to your head. You got to treat it the same way, and then your synaptic neurons recondition themselves and clear that glitch by having been rewired, because you kept ignoring them and focused on the moment and what you're busy with, and eventually it sees there's no takers here, and it learns, because brain has an ability to recondition. It's called neuroplasticity. It can rewire itself according to your behavior and the way you treat it. It fixes itself. And then once you clearly understand this, you're not afraid of it anymore. You allow any thought comes to your head, intrusive of all kinds, because you understand thoughts have nothing to do with you. Your sexuality was not given to you by your thoughts, and sexuality cannot be taken away by thoughts popping up on your head. When you understand that, you separate your persona from thought, then you're safe. You don't treat thoughts as if they're heavenly decree, if they're describing you. No, it's thought. It's one of the peripherals, your abilities. Thought is an ability, like seeing is an ability. But not everything that you see, you've created it, or it's you. You have the ability to see, and you have the ability to think when you want to calculate something, accomplish something, design something, produce something. And also, unfortunately, have a possibility we have that thought that have nothing to do with our doing pops up. Thought is not you. You're not thought. And thoughts is not something that you create. Unless you're calculating something, to design something, to draw something, to actually produce something and create something. That's a different thinking. That belongs to us based on our consciousness. But the rest of the stuff that pops up, intrusive and transient thoughts, have nothing to do with us. When we understand that, when we're free from anxiety and then lead to depression and all these discomforts and questions about our sexuality or anything else, because we have understood that we have the ability for thoughts to pop up, but that's got nothing to do with us. We ignore it, we go about it, and we rewire our synaptic neurons, our brain, by knowing about this ability to rewire ourselves. All right, who started that question? Damn. You guys get me going on these sort of things, and I've already discussed it in the previous ones, but that's all right. Yeah, that was Casanova. All right.